What's up, guys? Today is May 6th, 2020, and this is your Tech Minute. Or not. So, a few changes to this particular program. I decided to do this once a week because I couldn't find the balance of news and information that would be consistently entertaining. So I thought maybe I should just condense everything into 1 week. Things that you should probably know about and the things that, might just completely miss you. In that regard, today is kind of special because I'll be focusing on only one topic, and that is cryptocurrency. The differences between things like Bitcoin and a digital currency like the digital yuan that China is about to unroll, or currently is unrolling right now. They're actually testing it in 4 cities in China. It's a very confusing topic. Most people don't know how to even describe what a cryptocurrency is, let alone explain how it works. So I'm going to do my very best to simplify what is a cryptocurrency and how does it affect you in the future. Before I begin, I want you guys to subscribe and hit that bell notification because I'll be doing different kind of lessons like this in the future. Give a little investment advice that, especially things that have worked for me. Tell you how my finances are looking. But I generally want to help people understand what is going on in the financial world because it's going to make for better politics, just in general. What I'm realizing is voting for your president or your leaders in your country, what's equally important is how and where you put your money, because that money influences the politics as well. So you need a kind of equilibrium, politics and the capitalistic nature of how society works. And you kind of vote with those 2 metrics. So when the average person hears cryptocurrency, the first word that usually comes to their head is probably Bitcoin. It's the most popular. It's in the news cycle constantly. And whenever you hear a financial institute worried and shaking in their boots, it's probably because of Bitcoin. So what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a really good jumping point to describe cryptocurrencies because it's the very first. It is the granddaddy that brought a new type of technology to the forefront called blockchain. It's a really interesting topic because generally speaking, no one knows who created Bitcoin. The birth of Bitcoin was actually out of activism. And to understand how that happened, let's just give the whole history of Bitcoin and when it was created. Back in 2007, it was a much different time. Well, maybe not that different. Similar things that are happening today were happening in 2007 as well. You had bubbles being created, financial bubbles being created in the stock market, real estate environment, and political tensions were at an all-time high. These things occurred right before 2008 when the complete collapse of the stock market led the entire world into a depression. Now, the way that happened is complicated on itself, so maybe I'll do a different video about that. But let's just say that the capitalists around the world mismanaged money, and it created this kind of domino effect, which caused people to sell off quickly and caused all sorts of different systems to crash. And therefore, there was not enough money circulating in the system to keep things going. Back on point. So in 2007, kind of similar to here, it was apparent that we would be hitting a depression and it would be a crisis. It was at this time that someone or some people, a group, we don't know if it's one or a group of people, took on the moniker Satoshi Nakamoto. It's coined with the creating Bitcoin. This is the group, and I believe it's a group, not really one person, because it's very complex coding. And they wanted to make a competing currency against the American dollar, which is seen around the world as the reserve currency. And that means that every bank needs to hold a certain amount of American dollar, and you use that American dollar to do trade with other countries. And this is where central banks come in. They kind of regulate spending within an environment and maintain how many reserve dollars are in the system. After 2008, Satoshi made it perfectly clear that there was a need for a competing currency. It could not just be the American dollar or the Chinese yuan or the European euro, because all of these systems are enclosed in a system which puts everyone else in a bind, pretty much. Whenever you have bad players, everyone else was affected. And that's just me being the least cynical that I could possibly be. If you look at the conspiracy theorists, these things were forced into place to make sure the world are kind of in an enclosed system of slavery, pretty much. As I've said before, Satoshi Nakamoto, whether a group or a person, decided as a competing currency, they would make it digital. There have been attempts to create a competing currency, such as going back to the gold standard, but that has a problem in itself, that gold as a physical element causes kind of bumps along the way when it becomes scarce. Digital currencies seem like a natural solution, perhaps a self-contained system that can create money when needed, but maintain a healthy supply of scarcity with an open ledger that everyone can see. And with the creation of Bitcoin came about blockchain technologies. We need to understand blockchain. It was a way for people to share information democratically. That's it in a nutshell. To make it quite simple, blockchain technology ensures that information is seen by the entire network and approved by multiple parties, not just one centralized figure or figureheads. It was essential that if one part of the system was down, other parts of the system would carry on. But this democracy ensures there aren't any bad players. Within the blockchain technology, each person that participates in the system would be able to see where amounts of money went, not necessarily who sent it, but at least you have some forms of transparency of how money moved and the political motivations behind them. And it's with this blockchain ledger technology that Bitcoin as a cryptocurrency or as a currency that could be used really shined. These two powerful elements, along with the privacy that comes with Bitcoin and owning Bitcoin and trading Bitcoin outside of governmental bodies, would ensure that people would always have a form of independent currency, very separate from the political bullshit that the rest of the world find themselves wrapped up in. Oil money out of the Middle East greatly encourages bad behavior. I feel like these things could be mitigated in the future, but generally speaking, Bitcoin is seen as the pirates' kind of currency, where bad players can use Bitcoin out of the reach of government. And you may have some bad things rise out of it, but I think it's something that could be easily fixed as we go, if us as a society decided to use it more often. With that said, let's talk about Bitcoin transactions. So a transaction is a moment in time when Bitcoin is sent from one party to another. This is how Bitcoin maintains its decentralized nature. It's by a combination of miners and transaction signatures. These miners and transaction signatures work by a series of convoluted mathematical equations. So pretty much the system presents someone with a computer with a increasingly by the day harder to harder puzzle. This is the simple way of thinking about it. By trying to solve this mathematical problem, you need an enormous amount of resources. Big computers, big graphical cards, all of that, which shows an effort to try to contribute to the system. These resources are rewarded with Bitcoin signatures and also Bitcoin paid to the person, or in this case the miner, that is carrying out the transaction signature. Bitcoin maintain a decentralized nature where no one party is responsible for how a transaction happens or where it goes. Digital currencies are issued by institutions. One of the biggest examples of this right now would be the Chinese government. In order to stop predicted monetary problems that will arise in the future because of things like COVID-19 and geopolitical wars that are being carried out around the world between America, the Middle East, Russia, and even their own country in China, with this whole trade war thing, they need to figure out ways to keep business going. and not have to depend on American banks or the American dollar. Those ideas is to use blockchain technology to create a type of currency that is centralized in such a way that the government itself controls its issuance. They would have records of where it went, who received it, when these things happened, and what was purchased. This gives a lot of power to the Chinese government, so it's a much more worrisome proposition than one may realize at first glance. Can you imagine a world where each central bank has a currency that knows everything about what you do? Can you imagine a world where each central bank issues a currency whenever it's spent, pretty much tattletales on you? I don't like that. So, I think this is where the world is headed, because it just makes a lot more sense from a financial point of view, but it should be worried for people who tout freedom and freedom of speech and freedom of action. I'll make a prediction by saying within the next year or two, the Chinese government will be using more and more of this digital currency because it will be a way to get around bank sanctions. Sanctions such as the ones that they placed on Iran recently, or I should probably say which sanction they placed on Iran recently. Pretty much when the United States does not like a particular country, they would one of the more famous ones is Cuba. And these sanctions prevent that country from easily trading money or their reserve dollar. And other countries are penalized for doing business with that country. So if there was a system outside of the normal banking system, you can theoretically do trade with that country without the United States knowing. These type of actions will ensure that trade between all countries are still working, and that is something that I could be behind because I don't like the idea of sanctions per se in the way that the United States is currently using it. The way a digital currency backed by national standards may support things like Bitcoin, which can be a global standard. That is something that in that regard, I can kind of support these type of actions because I believe that everything should have a balance. And a world that is Bitcoin and fiat currency in tandem works together is a world that we can all be happy about. It's just a quick summary of what Bitcoin and a cryptocurrency is and how a digital currency can be used by a nation. I will go into depth about digital currencies later and a little bit more about the Bitcoin mining process. But like I said earlier, don't forget to subscribe and comment. And if you have any questions whatsoever on this kind of quick video, please let me know. I've been looking into cryptocurrencies for the last 8 years now. I do hold Bitcoin and Ethereum and some things like Neo, but those things I will talk about a little later. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and I hope next time you can join me as I go deeper into these topics and maybe some other forms of technology that, is not really talked about. Stay safe.